Oh, what's up, YouTube? I'm DJ here with Tim's Nation. Wanted to record a quick video. Had a long weekend with work, getting used to a new work schedule, new job, everything like that. So I want to make sure that I'm trying to keep up and keep content coming out here while I'm editing some of my more in-depth videos. Hopefully getting a game here soon with the new Necron list that I'm throwing down. And I got a couple other things that's in the works with working on building up units and building up the army, as well as the oncoming world eaters. I plan on building them and doing some box openings, paintings, buildings, and touching on all of the things for not just the world eaters, but in general, just getting ready for a GT and going to a GT. I figure one of the best ways to talk to people about what goes into making an army for a tournament to go to an event or anything like that is to actually build one from scratch and start from the beginning. Right now, I got my Car the Betrayer built up, and I have 2 rhinos in a box ready to go. And once we start seeing some releases, I'll start making some videos highlighting some of the stuff that I'm going to be doing with them. But this video is focusing on one topic that's been a question that a lot of people have asked me multiple times when talking about building a Necron army or what they want to do for Necrons and this stuff. And it's always the same question. Do I need the Silent King? It's hard to say no. And it's hard to say no because I don't necessarily believe if it's true or not. In one hand, you're looking at a guy who costs you a quarter of your points. Almost a quarter of your points. He's come down in points recently. He gained core, lost core, caused the internet to go on fire with, can you resurrect a rock? Can you not? And as a Necron player, I will vote and say, you cannot resurrect the rocks. You could never resurrect the rocks. And my reason is it conflicts with the rules for what the how the rocks take damage versus wound allocation for other units. You can tell me I'm wrong. You can tell me it's this, that. You can cite rules and everything else. Now it doesn't matter. He no longer has core, so we don't have to worry about it. But my belief was the rocks couldn't be resurrected. I do think you could have veiled them, but I don't think you can resurrect the rocks. Regardless, that doesn't matter anymore because he does not have core. So what about him right now? What is the Silent King bringing to the Necron army that makes him so necessary? So I hate the term auto-include, but it almost falls into a point that you want to play Necrons. Okay, you're building a 2,000-point army. Well, you're starting at 1580 because you're Silent King. He is a supreme command choice, so it's not like he takes your HQ slot. He does take one of your detachments, but with us starting with so little CP now and having so few command points, it's hard to take multiple detachments. If you're taking 1, maybe 2, and that's really, really rare as it is there because command points are harder to come by. We're very command point starved, as it would be said right now. The Silent King gives you 3 back. So you take him, and he's a supreme command. So he's already costing you 0 because he shares the keywords of Necron, the different Necron's keywords with the rest of your army. So he costs you nothing. He gives you 3 CP just for being in your army. So now you're starting your army construction back at 9 command points. He has to be your warlord, which honestly, with some of the Necron warlord traits, there's a lot to be desired there. The one that gives you a re-rolling failed charge aura is pretty good, but that's best served on a guy with Veil of Darkness, maybe teleporting a squad of Scorpex or something else to try and get that long-ranged 9-inch charge from behind a wall or a safe position moving up the field. Aside from that, Necron warlord traits are a little lacking. They're a little what I would call selfish. They base around the character themselves, not necessarily what they bring to the army. And there's a lot to be desired there. The Silent King, and not to mention not even getting a free warlord trait, the Silent King being your warlord doesn't usually hurt you that much, if at all. He's big and mean and 16 wounds, technically. While he has the 2 rocks that give him an additional 10 wounds before he's destroyed to take him up to 26 wounds. And I say that loosely because him himself is only 16. He himself, whichever that may be. He's only 16 wounds, which means he can take obscuring terrain. He can hide behind walls. He can be just behind a wall and not being able to be seen and shoot at a Imperial Knight or other Titanic units that cannot hide behind obscuring simply because of how many wounds he has. Pros and cons. Pros, you can defend him if you go second. Cons, that's a big guy to have hiding in the backfield waiting. With a lot of the Necron secondaries, he's very good to be able to play into that late game where you don't need to push out there. But he's still 400 some points of your army hiding behind a wall on the first turn while you want to get him moving up the field. At least closer to be able to threaten at least mid-board for Purge the Vermin secondaries and things like that. He is probably the bigger thing about him, which makes him so auto-includey, making up words on the fly. He has the only full rerolls in the Necron army. You have reroll 1s, you have reroll 1s to wound off Scorpex, which, take a second to talk about this. I do not understand why Code of Combat just can't be characters. It breaks my heart every time that the Destroyers and Destroyer Lords and Scorpec Lords and those guys are just a null set because they don't have access into like Code of Combat. Code of Combat targeting just characters, maybe having point cap for the turn, get them in there. Anyways, off that rant, back to the Silent King and all of his full rerolls. This is where your damage comes from. He is going to take units like Destroyers and make them reliable. He takes Scorpec Destroyers and makes them a blender. He takes anything that has the core keyword and turns it into a threat. As of late, I've been running Annihilation Barges around him just so that I can re-roll everything on their Tesla or Telsa and have the 6s giving me 2 additional hits and just so much volume of shots that they're able to put out off of that one little 125 point boat. So right now, everything I've said that pretty much probably right now you're saying, okay, this is so I need to go out and buy the Silent King. I need him for my army. And if you're just learning Necrons, maybe that's the route you should go. He gives you a lot of error proofing. He gives you a lot of ways that you can get out of bad situations because of the fact of how much extra he's giving you. He's got a good profile himself. I mean, he's nothing to shy at. He's got a boatload of shots, a boatload of attacks. The manures on the side, they're put down heavy damage. There's a lot to be said for what he can do and what he has. But his bigger reason you're taking him is because of his reroll buffs. And it's the only way you're getting him in the entire army to be able to have damage output, which is something that the army severely lacks. When you look at some of the bigger units, the Doomsday Arc, the Canoptic Doomstalker, the Doom Scythe, all those things, they have weapons that could potentially do damage, but then they have so many drawbacks to them. The Annihilation Barge and the Doomstalker have to sit still in order to get their better profile, which is still random shots for random damage, which is kind of rough on the whole, where you get one shot that could maybe do 6 damage, or you get 6 shots, but then when you get to the damage step, you're making 1, 2, 1, 2, and not just no damage coming through. So that's a tough place to get by with the Necrons. Destroyers have short range, but off the Silent King, they can really eliminate just about anything that they hit. Even with the D3 damage being, again, random damage, yes, but 3 shots apiece in the volume, 3 shots is not that much. But being able to reroll all the hits and having access to a strat that can reroll hits and wounds, expensive on 2 CP, the Silent King lets you be able to afford to do that strat maybe more than once. And then since they have core, they can get hit by my Will Be Done, which the king dishes out that twice. 2 separate core units getting +1 to hit. I go back to the Annihilation Barges. They're core. They are not characters, so they still maintain the vehicle and being core. So the Silent King really is the D-cell battery you plug into this Christmas toy and light up the table with all your pretty little gauze lights. Can we get away from it? Can we not use him? Can we not use the Silent King? And I'm here to say yes. Yes, you can get away from the Silent King. Yes, he is not as much of an auto include as we believed before. Why I can say that. So the Necrons still have access to, there's 2 dynasties that I'm looking at when I say this. Number 1 is still the custom dynasty that we're all familiar with, which is Relentless Expansionists and Eternal Conquerors, being able to cover the board with your units and not a moving free game, covering objective secured, all this stuff. I know I'm stuttering over my words here because it's just so much. It's just so much that Dynasty gives you that no other army has. All the objectives secured, all the coverage, all that. The other one is Novak. And that's going to be where the next army that I'm playing, that I'm going to be more or less highlighting Scarabs, which is in a video to come soon, where I'm talking about them and what they can do and their potential. I'm looking into the Novak Dynasty. And the Novak Dynasty is interesting. With the new command protocols and the fact that we get a command protocol that stays with us all game, the Hungry Void gives a lot of boost to close combat. Now, one of them is a little niche. It's 6s to wound are an additional AP. The Novak Dynasty says if you charge, you get an additional AP. So we're looking at 6s would be AP2, while everything else would be AP1, assuming that it's an AP0 unit, such as the Scarabs that I'm talking about. Everything else getting a little bit of higher AP may or may not help, depending on the unit type, Lich Guard and stuff like that. But for the most part, that's one I'm looking at, as well as the +1 strength off the charge, which is I think that's going to be the bigger of the buffs. That's really going to help emphasize what I'm trying to do with the army. So with that, though, I'm not going to have the rerolls. Scarabs don't get the rerolls. Scarabs are core, but they don't get them. Are not core, so they don't get them. Necron Warriors and such can still get my will be done because I will still run an Overlord to have access to the command protocols. However, we don't need to stay so funneled and so focused. I think sometimes the king draws a bullseye. He says, here's where I'm at, and here's where my game's going to play from. And I want to be able to spread out and do a little more coverage on everything. So with this, we're going to be investing forward, and the project moving forward is Project Anti-Silent King. Can this be done without the Silent King? Do we need to have the Silent King? And hopefully after a couple games, we can really come back and reevaluate this question, and I can answer it some more. Right now, I feel like the Silent King, if I were to give him a rating, 1 out of 10, 10 being an absolute auto-include, go buy him now and put him in every army, and a 1 being, if you're buying him, you're just painting him. I would say he's an 8. I think that the majority of armies do need him. I think competitively, there's not a lot of reasons to not run him, but we're going to look into this some more. We're going to see what we can come up with, what we can make happen, and eventually what armies we can end up running without the Silent King, without that extra 400 points there. Maybe there's other things we can spend that 400 points on to give us more board presence, especially with the other Necron secondaries that are just so good. So many points that you can score off those. Can you do it without? So I'm looking at Novak Dynasty. Let me know what you guys think. Let me know what you guys have thought about the Silent King, where he stands for you. Do you feel he's an auto-include? Do you think we can get away from it? Please like, share, subscribe, and I'll talk to you guys again soon. Thanks.